Hello, I'm Penny Grubb from Fantastic Books Publishing. Today is launch day for the Defiant Spark, and I'm talking to the author Annie Percik. This is Annie's first novel. It's her first publication with Fantastic Books, but she has an impressive short story CV and she's covered many genres. But thank you for joining me, Annie.
Well, thank you. It's exciting to be here.
Now, the Defiant Spark is classified as fantasy, but I found science fiction in it too. For all that it's based around mana, which is essentially a magical source of energy, in my experience, books about magic are often set in a world that feels entirely apart from the world we know. But you've chosen to ground your magic very firmly in a world that, well, everyone who's ever touched a computer or a technical device is going to recognise. For me, that gave it a science fiction grounding that I really loved. So I wondered, can you talk about the idea of helplines, engineers, customer complaints in your magic world, kind of where it all came from, and how you see the book in terms of genre?
Well, it's always been quite difficult to categorize, as you say, because it's not pure fantasy, because there's a lot of technology in it, and it's not really science fiction because of the magic. Someone described it as science fantasy the other day, so maybe I'll just go with that. The original idea came from a short story creative writing course I did for the Open University. One of my friends was also on the course and we exchanged our assignments, and he read it and said, I think there's a novel in this, which is why it's dedicated to him, Andy P. Because he prompted me to write the novel, and I basically gave it a go just to prove him wrong, and then he turned out to be right. And the original idea came from a conversation I had with my husband, Dave, about where magical societies needed tech support, because he works in the tech industry. So I kind of got into the idea of there being a call center for engineers who have to deal with problems of having their magical machines. And everybody's kind of had the experience of phoning up tech support and discovering how frustrating that can be. So it seemed like a universal experience that could be then taken to a really different direction with the introduction of the magic.
Yeah, it's a really interesting angle on it. Now, I understand you had fan fiction written for this novel before it was even finished, let alone published. How did that come about?
Well, my husband, as I said, is a techie, and he reacts to fiction in a very different way to me. I'm very much more into the characters and the relationships, and he likes the technology and knowing how everything works and what everything looks like, all the rules of the world building. And after he read the first draft, which was quite rough, if I'm being honest, he came back to me with loads of questions about all of the technical detail of the world that I didn't really know how to answer. And it was not long before Christmas, and on Christmas Day he presented me with 4 short stories he'd written in the world of the book, where he answered a lot of those questions in how he thought that it should go. So of course I stole most of his ideas and worked them into the books. They're actually canon now.
Oh, that's brilliant. Now, the Defiant Spark has been set aside certain other novels in a certain respect. For example, The Starless Sea, The Archive, The Invisible Library, The 10,000 Doors of January, Ninth House. And it's in terms of people being taken out of their comfort zones and being forced to take on new roles. So I wondered if you could say something about your protagonist, Abelard, in that respect.
Well, I think most of the books are about secret worlds within the world that we know, and the people who stumble across them, and that's kind of what leads them into their adventure. I've always seen Abelard, who starts out as a call center operative, as the kind of person who really wants to understand all the secrets of the universe, but he's just too lazy to get out of bed and figure them out for himself. And the artisans in his world hold all the power, and he's always wanted to be one and to have all of the access to the knowledge that they have. but he's been barred from that world. And then a freak accident throws him into that world. And of course, you know, as usually happens when we get what we think we want, it turns out very differently to how he expected.
Yes, yeah, and his story mirrors real life in so many ways, which was something I loved about the book. Now, I understand you work as complaints officer, Annie, which sounds to me like a job that involves a lot of potential drama and confrontation. Now, I understand you have to respect confidentiality, but is it a job that sparked any of your ideas?
Well, interestingly, I was thinking about this, and my job in complaints is actually subsequent to me starting the novel. So Abelard's role predates my role in complaints. So it's possible that Abelard inspired my work choice rather than the other way around. But and I work in a university that trains lawyers, so it's a very different area to the one that he deals with in the book. But I do think that, yes, my role in that kind of customer service job probably did inform later versions of the book and provide some more authenticity to the call centre characters. And later on, Abelard moves into quality assurance, also encourages the artisans to do more market research, and they're both areas I've worked in as well, so there's at least some real life in there.
Yes, you certainly get the authenticity of those sorts of areas, which is great. And I love the idea that maybe the novel changed your career path. But it's hard to launch a book in a pandemic. We can't do all the usual things, but do you have any events planned?
Well, I mean, I had originally planned to have a launch party in my favourite cafe where I actually wrote most of the book. But sadly, that cafe actually closed down several months before the first lockdown. So that was never going to happen anyway. And I didn't think that there was going to be any kind of an event. But my husband actually organised a surprise online launch party for me last week. I was just minding my own business after work on a Monday, and he called me over to his PC and sat me down, and suddenly there were 30 people looking at me out of Zoom windows. So that was a bit of a shock, but it was really lovely. And he had my family and all of his family and lots of our friends and even some of my work colleagues. So it was really lovely, and I answered questions and everybody was very excited about it. So it was great to have that kind of event around the publication of the book.
Well, that sounds absolutely brilliant. What a wonderful surprise. I know that writing isn't your only creative endeavour, so I was wondering if you could tell me something about the media review podcast you make with your husband.
Yes, a couple of years ago, we were just having a conversation, and I said something that made Dave laugh. And he actually said to me, "We're really funny. Maybe we should start a podcast." And around that time, one of my favourite podcasters, Kristin Meinzer, who co-hosts By the Book with her friend Jolenta, brought out a book called How to Start a Podcast. So I bought it. And hilariously, in the introduction, one of her first tips is, don't start a podcast just because you and your friend Dave think you're funny. So we had to kind of go back to the drawing board and come up with a proper structure and a good concept. And what we came up with is a show called Will You Still Love It Tomorrow, where we take it in turns to pick a TV show or a film that we were a fan of before we were married, so at least 10 years ago, and that the other one doesn't know. And we both watch it completely separately and make notes, and then come together and discuss what we thought. So the person who was a fan originally discovered whether it holds up now and they still like it, and the person who's new to it looks at it with fresh eyes. And it's a really interesting way to kind of revisit old favorite TV shows. And we've had some interesting discussions about things that we thought we liked and turned out we didn't, and that we didn't think the other person would like, and they did. And we've been doing it for nearly 18 months now, and we're still really enjoying it. Available on all good podcasting platforms.
Well, that sounds absolutely great. And I understand you are getting a growing audience then, if you've been running it that long and you're still going at it. I think
yes.
I think we're going to I think we'll get your links from you and get them up on your page on our website, though I'm sure they're already on your website.
Yes, great.
Can you tell me What's next on your writing agenda? Is it you're going to do something new, or are you going to do a sequel to The Defiant Spark? Obviously, I'm not going to give any spoilers, but I personally would be really interested to know what happened next to one of the characters, Matteo, because it was such an unusual and unexpected twist.
Well, that would be telling. But yes, I think Matteo does have a very interesting road ahead of him. There are certain aspects of the Defiant Spark that could be used to fuel a sequel, and I won't say never, but I've actually just finished what I hope final edit, my second, which is a completely different story about a biologist called Anushka who gets contaminated with a substance which has powers, and she ends up getting embroiled in trying to prevent an interstellar war. So it's a very different kind of book. Interestingly, and quite fully, when my husband Dave, who you'll features quite prominently in my writing life, read the first draft, he came up to me afterwards with this really kind of serious expression on his face, and I thought, oh, didn't he like it? And he kind of looked at me and said, I'm really sorry. And I thought, oh no, you know, this is terrible. And he said, I think it's better than the first one. And I thought, well, I hope so. You know, the first one, 10 years to write. I'd hope I've got better since then. So yeah, I'm really proud of it, and I'm looking forward to submitting it. And I'm actually just in the process of starting outlining on my third one, which is going to be a full-on sword sorcery fantasy novel about a blacksmith's daughter protecting a queen from a tyrannical king who wants to destroy her magic. So again, completely different.
Well, wow, so there's quite a lot in the pipeline. I'm sure you're going to build an audience thirsting for more once people have read The Defiant Spark, but it doesn't sound like you're going to disappoint them. Anyway, Annie, I have to thank you for a fascinating insight into your book and your writing life. We wish you every success with The Defiant Spark. And I just want to mention that something that won't have escaped the notice of our eagle-eyed viewers. The Defiant Spark launches on Valentine's Day. Well, we've talked about it as a fantasy, and we've talked about it as science fiction, but there is actually a love story in there, maybe more than one, and rather surprising, entangled in friendships, conflicting loyalties as the stories unfold. It's, well, no spoilers again, but it's part of the book that is not going to unravel the way that you expect. The book is available now in paperback and ebook from Amazon. A quick link to get you to your local Amazon page is getbook.at / The Defiant Spark, all lowercase. That's getbook.at / The Defiant Spark. Thanks again, Annie, for a fascinating interview.
Thanks very much. It's a pleasure.